Hello, good morning everyone. I welcome you for the today's lecture that is about the wind erosion. Now, in today's lecture, we will discuss about the principle, mechanics, and types of soil movement. Now, firstly, what is erosion? That is the what is the soil erosion? Now, soil erosion is detachment, transportation, and deposition of soil particles from one place to the another place. This process is called as soil erosion. When the erosion causing agent is wind, it means that is the erosion is taking place by the influence of blowing wind, means the detachment transportation of soil particles is carried out by the wind action, by the action of blowing wind. That time the soil erosion is termed as wind erosion. Now, mechanics of wind erosion. Here you can see wind erosion occurs where soil is exposed to the dislodging force of wind. The intensity of wind erosion varies with soil roughness, slope, and types of cover on the soil surface, and wind velocity, duration, and angle of incidence. Now, the whole process of wind erosion is completed in three different phases. The first phase of wind erosion is the initiation of movement. The second phase of mechanics of wind erosion is transportation, and the third phase of wind erosion is the deposition. Now, one by one, we will take all the three phases of wind erosion. Now, the first is the initiation of movement. The initiation of movement of soil particles is caused by several factors affecting separately in combination. In the course of collision of grains rolling and bumping on the surface, some particles may be bounced up. It occurs when the wind force or the impact of moving particles is strong enough to dislodge stationary soil particles. Now, what is about the initiation of movement? Initiation of movement is nothing but it is the detachment of soil particles from their parent material or from their original places. Means there is a detachment, a dislodging or separation of soil particles from their original places, that is termed as the initiation of movement. Means from this point the movement of soil particles begins. Now, when the soil particles get dislodged, get separated, or get detached from their parent material, the next phase of wind erosion is the transportation. In the transportation, the soil particles moves from one place to the another place. That is the dislodged, the detached, or the separated particles get transported from one place to the another place. But this transportation is completed by three different ways. That is, the first one is the saltation. Second one is the soil creep. It is also called as the surface creep. Soil creep is also called as the surface creep. And the third one is the suspension. Now, in the saltation, soil particles of medium size, that is the here in saltation, soil particles of medium size are carried by wind in a series of short bounces. These bounces are caused by the direct pressure of wind on soil surface. Right? By this way, the saltation process of transportation is completed. Then second one is the surface creep or soil creep. Saltation also encourages soil creep by rolling or sliding along the surface of the particles ranging from 0.5 to 1 mm diameter. The bouncing particles carried by saltation strike the large aggregates and speed up their movement along the surface. Then third phase of transportation is when the particles of soil are very small, that is less than 0.1 mm. That time they are carried over the long distances. Finer suspended particles are moved parallel to the ground surface and upward. This type of transportation is called as the suspension. Now the last phase of wind erosion is the deposition. Deposition of particles occurs when the gravitational force is greater than the forces holding the particles in air. Deposition could occur when the wind velocity is decreased due to surface obstructions and other natural causes. Okay, this is about the mechanics of wind erosion. Now shortly, the mechanics of wind erosion is completed in three different phases. The first one is the initiation of movement, that is the soil particle is get detached, get separated or get dislodged from its parent material or from its origin place, and such a detachment is termed as the initiation of movement. Once the particle get detached from its place, the movement of particle is get started. That time there is the second phase of wind erosion, that is the transportation. In the transportation, there is movement of soil particle from one place to the another place, and that movements are completed in three different phases, that is the saltation, surface creep or soil creep, and the third one is the suspension. In the saltation, the soil particle is moved from one place to the another place by wind in a series of short bounces. Means the movement of soil particle is carried out in a series of short bounces over the ground surface. Then next one is the surface creep or soil creep. That is, here the movement of soil particles takes place by the rolling or sliding of particle over the land surface. That is, the movement is completely completed by the rolling or by the sliding over the land surface. Such a movement of soil particles is called as the soil creep or surface creep. That the last transportation means is that is the suspension. Suspension means that is the in suspension phase the soil particle is completely in the suspended state in the air, and in the state of suspension that particle get moved from one place to the another place, and such a movement, such a transportation is termed as suspension. Now the suspension is completed. The suspension of soil particles takes place when the particle size is less than 0.1 mm. When the particle size is less than 0.1 mm, that time the movement of soil particle is completed by suspension. When the particle size ranges from 0.1 to 0.5 mm, 0.1 to 0.5 mm, that time the transportation or the movement of soil particle is carried out by saltation process. Means the particles ranging from 0.1 mm to 0.5 mm are carried by the wind in a series of short bounces. And when the particle size is 0.5 to 1 mm or 3 mm, when the particle size exceeds 0.5 mm size up to the 1 mm or maybe sometimes up to 3 mm, that time the particles are transported or moved from one place to the another place by the action of rolling or sliding over the ground surface, and such movement is termed as the soil creep or surface creep. These are the different movement of particles in the wind erosion. Now what is the deposition? That is the whenever the transporting force is get declined, and when the gravitational force is greater than the force holding the particles in air, that time there is deposition of particles at the new places. And once the particles get deposited at new places, that time the process of wind erosion gets completed.